Okay,
And
before calling the meeting to order, I would like to do a roll call of the work group members. This is not in any particular order, frankly. Allison Robbins.
I'm here.
Okay, Kate Hanley, I see.
I'm here.
And Walt Latham is here. Jason Corwin, I see. Barry Condry, I see. Barbara Tabb said she would join this meeting.
Yep, I'm here.
I see. Okay. Joanne Speeden, I heard your voice.
Yes, I'm here.
Tram Nguyen is here. Tammy Beard is here. Jessica Ackerman, is she here? I don't have her.
Jessica Ackerman may no longer be joining us. She's no longer with the Virginia Municipal League.
Okay.
Now works for the Division of Legislative Services, I believe.
Okay, in that case, we'll have to find a replacement for her. I'm glad to know that. I didn't have any notice of that. Okay, very good. And
Kim Cummings
is traveling, so I know that she's not.
and Katie Boyle will not be with us.
And
either,
Katie
correct?
Boyle notified me that she would not be able to attend.
Very good.
Good. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm calling the meeting to order. This is the Advisory Review Workgroup of the State Board of Elections. And I wanted to give a little statement regarding the fact that this is a virtual meeting. There was, in the budget bill passed in special session last August, paragraph 17A includes this, and I'm reading you an excerpt. Notwithstanding any other provision of law, any executive advisory board or council may conduct a meeting by electronic communications means without a quorum of the public body physically assembled at one location, if the meeting is held solely to receive presentations, updates, public comment, or conduct other forms of information gathering. If a quorum is not physically assembled, the commission and so forth, committee, subcommittee, so forth, shall not take any votes or make any formal recommendations at such meeting. Therefore, we will not be taking any votes. There was never any intention to take any votes. We are gathering information at this meeting, so it falls within the parameters of this provision of the budget bill. And there are limitations on the number of virtual meetings that can be held in a year, and I would anticipate that moving forward, our meetings would all be in person. So this is hopefully a one-time event, and we could do it another time, but that is not the expectation. So the main item on the agenda, and I would like to jump right into this, is to pick up where we left off back in July with the outline of measures based on a proposed definition of a well-run election. And we had worked our way through the first two sections, and let me give the proposed definition for the public. And that is, a well-run election must be accessible, efficient, transparent, secure, and accurate, so that the public can be confident in the election results. And so we began developing this outline of measures in order to determine whether or not an election was well run. So we took each of those elements and we put sub-elements in there, starting with accessibility, and we have already gone through that. There are a few minor changes from the last draft based on our conversation last July. And we have done accessibility, and we have looked at efficiency. And I would like to caution you all that there will be things that look like they are duplicative. That doesn't mean you would measure something twice. It means that you would measure something through more than one lens, a lens of, say, efficiency, and a lens of transparency and a lens of security, for example, just to pull those out. But we are now going to move into transparency. And if you have a paper version, I believe this is on page 3 of your draft. And there are a number of duplications with the efficiency category in the transparency category. So let's just start and run right through them and stop. I would like the workgroup members to look at these and see if you have any objections. As I said initially, this is a very comprehensive list. If you see things in here that you think are just too much, excessive, not needed, that's fine. And of course, if you see things that are missing, we need to fill those in. So we're going to start with notices.
So Lisa,
Yes.
if I may, if you would like to share the document electronically, you may do that, if that would help. Just want to make that offer. Maybe
I have my paper version in front of me, and I don't know if anyone has the electronic version, and someone else could share.
Okay.
Do you have it available? I mean, that's a very good idea, Barry.
Is it in the email that you sent with all the attachments?
Yes.
Okay. And I don't want to slow us down, but it may be for people who didn't have it. It may be I don't know, illustrative of the process here. So bear with me for just a moment. I will bring your email up. Okay, so you sent the email on the 31st, and it has a number of attachments. One of them is outline for measures of a well-run election. Is that the document?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Let me open that. And I will not be able to edit it, but I will have it up on the screen and people can follow along like that. And I will share my screen now.
Lisa.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Allison.
Yeah.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for setting this up and getting us a virtual meeting. I think it's a good opportunity for all of us to have a meeting to discuss things. I am looking at the paper copy of the draft of outlines of measures based on proposed definitions of a well-run election. And I think that's what we're going to be working from.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And I feel like I need to renew or restate my concerns that I stated in July, that the definition of a successful election is a legally conducted election. So in order to comply with our requirement to legally conduct elections, those elections must be held in compliance with state and federal law. And so any idea that a successful election is in part reliant on opinions of people who are not election administrators and are not charged with the oversight and certification of elections opens things up into a dangerous area that I have concerns about. So I just wanted to remind my work group fellow members that as a general registrar and as an election administrator in this state, I have concerns about overly emphasizing outside public opinions related to what is a properly conducted or successful election. And that's all. Thank you, Lisa.
Well, thank you, Allison. That's a very good point, and I'm glad that you re-emphasized that. If you would like to propose some language to modify the definition, it has not been adopted formally by the work group, and that would be something that we would then consider at the next meeting.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we can work through what we have agreed to as far as like definitions of accessibility and transparency. And then once we know where we want to define those, we could probably better define a full definition of the whole plan once we've worked our way through it. I mean, I don't think I think we should get this work done and then go back and say, well, we've done all this work. What does it mean? And then we can encapsulate it in a proper definition.
Very good. Okay.
Thank you.
Lisa, is this the document that you wanted, the one I'm sharing right now?
No, that's not it. That's another document, information on types of measures.
Okay.
No, this is the outline of measures based on a proposed definition of a Wellrun election.
Okay.
Lisa, this is Barbara Tab. I've had my hand up. I just, you may not have seen it. I want to second what Allison just said. I know that there are lots of different attitudes, opinions, and perspectives. Sorry about that. Registrar's office calling. Allison, tell them to leave me alone. But our perspective of those of us who are legally constrained and legally directed by what we must do for a successful election has got to be understood. And it is probably very different from someone who is working for a candidate or a cause or is a very involved participant. And I share Allison's concerns that we've got to be very careful to understand that we can't come out with a work product here that goes against what we know we have to do legally. So I just wanted to say that. And for those of you that don't know, I'm from the Registrars Association. So Allison and I are kind of the two sides of a penny here, of who are tasked and have to legally what's required for an election.
Barbara, you said you're from the Registrars Association.
Yes.
Am I? Well, I was looking for a new job. Try that, make that electoral board association. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's what happens when
Barbara,
a registrar is calling me on one phone and I'm trying to talk to you guys on a second phone.
Oh, I know about that.
Okay, Barry, no, this isn't the same document either.
Well, I'm running out of, I'm sorry, I'm running out of
You see one that
documents.
says outline?
Yeah, in the attachments, it's the second Word document attachment. It shows on the screen as outline of measures.
I'm so embarrassed.
It's
Outline of measures for a well-run election.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You know, I so appreciate all of your patience. I guess to be involved in elections, you have to have the patience of a saint.
And be very detail oriented as well.
Okay. How about that one?
There you go.
Okay. Now, where do I need to go in the document, Lisa?
Okay, page 3.
Page 3. Boom.
Transparency. There we go.
And you might want to, because I'll be typing and doing a number of things, you may need to cue me to move down in the document when necessary.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I hope everyone can read the screen. And here we go on that one.
I'll make it bigger.
Yes, that's better. Okay, we're starting with notices. Online and printed material.
Barbara, you may want to put your hand down. And Frank has hand up, but is not. But we'll. I'm assuming Lisa, you'll get to that at the end in the public comment period, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Please refrain from raising your hand until the public comment period. Mr. Pointer, if you could lower your hand, please.
Lisa,
She heard you.
Lisa, this is Allison.
Yes.
In the nature of time, I would ask that we do this similar to what we did in July, where you or one of us read the various bullet points, and
Yes.
any committee member could raise an objection if they have an objection to that section. I would also suggest that after this meeting, for the sake of time, if something does not immediately jump out to you as objectionable, or you want some time to think about it, I would suggest that we would send any comments or suggestions for changes to you after the meeting, unless you really feel like there's something that we should discuss right now. So if you want to just start right here with notices online and printed material disseminated to all citizens. Like as an example, I would suggest that instead of disseminated to all citizens, we say online and printed material properly posted in the legally required places, because some things go to all citizens, but some things don't. So, but I will make that note on mine and then intend to send that to you in an email.
Yes, that would be good, because otherwise there would be a lot of conversation going back and forth about the precise wording. And so if we can just share that with all the members, we can expedite this. The next one is, among notices, is election office information, general registrars and staff, and electoral board members. The next after that is time, date, all deadlines, locations, and hours, and that means noticing the elections. And then public meetings is the next one. Functions open to the public, such as logic and accuracy testing, RLAs, and I would add the canvas if that is appropriate. And then inform the political parties, and that's as required.
Lisa, I
Yes,
would take off LNA testing. That's not open to the public.
As I have read the statute, it is open to the public. It's required to be noticed to the political parties, but it doesn't otherwise say that it's not open to the public. During COVID, I know it was closed to the public, but that was a different matter.
It's not considered a public meeting, and we were also advised last year by the Department of Elections to not advertise it as a public meeting.
I see. I think that I have seen it as a public meeting when a majority of the electoral board was present at the LNA testing.
Do you have an authority for that, like a citation?
No, just that at least in one locality that I know of, the entire electoral board is present at the LNA testing, and the registrar interpreted that as meaning that the public could attend.
Lisa, I can confirm we have guidance that clearly says that the LNA testing is not a public meeting.
Okay, that's fine.
So I agree with Walt that I'm not saying that that is not something that should be on here. I would say that, like, for instance, certain things like LNA testing and other types of events that happen, we notify the proper people. It's just not always a public meeting. So maybe that needs to move into another section.
It's because you're checking the accuracy of the machines that you're exempt from having a public meeting because of security requirements related to the machines. And this is Rachel, by the way.
Yes.
And I can pull a code section. I just don't have it, but that's the Reader's Digest version. And I can provide that for you for your notes.
There's also a code. There's also a code section that specifically exempts certain things that a board does related to the election. And I believe testing is specifically listed there as something that does not constitute a public meeting. I think another one is training, or if they have to get together on election day to resolve an issue.
Election day as well. Yes.
Well, it's certainly, there's nothing essential about it. We'll just strike it. I mean, it was given as an example.
Well,
Right, and I'm not saying I necessarily would write it that way in the code if I were responsible. I'm just saying that's what the law is, that's what the guidance has been. So
Okay.
just something I thought we needed to flag.
Very good.
I would, this is Kate, I would suggest we move the LNA testing to the next bullet.
That was basically what I was saying too, Kate.
That's what we're doing. We're removing the LNA testing, Kate. That's fine.
Keep moving, yeah.
Okay. Inform the political parties of meetings, observation opportunities. And that is required, I believe. Timely and effective notice of changes in polling locations.
That's the law.
That's the law.
It's all the law. We hope everything in here has some justification under the law.
Okay, so let's keep going here. Results reporting, statewide, local, precinct level, method of voting. I don't know that that's in the law, but this would be a transparency issue. People want to know early in person, by mail, election day.
It's all, Lisa. We changed it last year to make sure it was in there.
Okay, good. And timeliness
Of reporting.
of reporting.
Timeliness of
Yeah, I mean, it's under that bullet of results reporting.
Yeah.
Yes, Kate?
I gotta ask a question. What does timeliness mean?
This is a reporting results.
I know. What is timely? When you finish or before you finish?
It
in
depends on,
compliance with the deadline.
Yeah,
I would
well,
say
but what
with
is,
the deadline.
okay. It's a little bit of a nitpick here because you can't report until you're finished. I mean, even on election day, you until you've got everything, you really can't report. You can report your precincts as soon as you finish them. I'm sort of in Alice's camp here in saying, what are we creating here? What is timeliness? If the whole world thinks 7:30 is timely, count me out
mhm.
for your counting. I mean, I just want to know what the definition of timeliness is here when we're transparent.
Well, can you offer one?
No, if I could,
Well, this is, Kate, I agree. Kate, I agree with, this is Walt. I agree with what you're saying. And I think this is where, just to reiterate what Allison was saying, is that in reviewing of this election and what a successful election is, we have these goals of, transparency and all that stuff, but we've got to work within the code. And so if we're going to have a list of measures, it needs, in my opinion, I'll reiterate, it needs to be something straight out of the code with a citation and not subjective as to what people feel or think, because frankly, it's irrelevant what people feel or think as far as whether or not we're meeting the requirements of the code. It's relevant what people feel or think as to what is in the code. And if they want us to do different things, then their feelings or thoughts need to be translated into code. But otherwise, the measures need to be the code, and there needs to be a citation or to either the code or the administrative code or to guidance. Otherwise, it just lends itself to subjectiveness and whatever the administration of the day interprets something as.
Lisa, I'm going to highlight timeliness for a broader, fleshed out definition, or maybe a better thought out concept of what we mean when we say timeliness. Because I know what we mean by timeliness, but I am compelled to kind of agree with Kate that timeliness, the idea of the word timeliness may be too objective as to what lens the person's looking through. So I would suggest that we highlight that one, knowing that it needs significant work.
Well,
and in the nature of time, I think
Allison, let me put a suggestion. I think we mean as efficiently as soon as possible, some definition that way, so that we dispel any notion that we really counted them last week and we're just sitting on them. No,
right.
But the as soon as possible is what we're talking about here, and I think we all want to do that. But it's not, you can't set a time. and say everybody's got to be through by 9 o'clock, kind of thing.
So your definition, timeliness would mean.
Well, I'm agreeing with you that let's put the concept of as timeliness is, we really mean, I think, as soon as we possibly efficiently can, somewhere in there. Isn't that what we mean? I'm not sure it but I agree with Allison. Let's set it aside.
Yeah, certainly if people think that the results are all final as of election night, that is simply not the case. So yes, I would welcome if you could put pen to paper and propose how to express this in a way that would convey the proper message.
Let me say, for somebody that reports a lot of stuff, let me give you an example. We were finished by 10:30 counting and reporting on our own website, but I get probably 50 calls on election night, at least, from people wanting to know where our results are. We have to send them to our site. We've already sent them to Veris, and they're in a queue somewhere, and they're not reported. So there's nothing I can do about that except say, look on our website as opposed to the state's. Ours didn't get put up till 2:30 in the morning, and we were all home. So there are a lot of things here that have to go into publishing reporting that we need to think about.
Right, and part of this evaluation is not only evaluating what happens at the local level, but also what happens at the state level. And both of those need to be taken into consideration. So let's move on to reports and other data collected. And we have an EG here, so these are examples. I would hope that if we're going to do measures, we can't just be measuring examples. We need to measure specific things. So, but one would be voter registration, voting numbers broken down by category, which is what we spoke of earlier in terms of methods of voting. Early in person, absentee by mail on election day. And then percentages of eligible voters registered and those voting percentages. And I put the voter turnout down. That's good to know. I'm not sure what that proves as far as whether an election is successful. There are lots of reasons why voters do or don't turn out. And it's something that it's data that's gathered. But I'm not entirely clear what it shows, what's demonstrated by voter turnout. Obviously, if no one turned out, that would sort of be catastrophic. But and if everyone turns out, it's wonderful. But what happens in between? I just don't know.
Lisa, and I'll just note I will note for those watching at home, this is all of this that's listed here is data that's published and available on the Department of Elections website in one place or another already. So this is nothing new. We are suggesting be created. Mm-hmm. And to be clear with you, this is not anything new you are suggesting be created. This is just an acknowledgement that these are the type of things we're talking about.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, that is absolutely true. In fact, in the next meeting, I would anticipate, I'm sorry, I'm jumping into this now, but we've raised it, Allison, so I'll say it. I would anticipate going through and seeing what is gathered and whether we would need to invent new categories of data collection. But ideally, we would use what is already available, collected, reported in the post-election report or on the elect website or in your locality. You would have that data available for those registrars and electoral board members who are on this work group. Then we look at publicly available information in voter education, and we looked at the department's role. In the last election, the department played a large role. And then does the locality have a role? and what is that? Then there's information that is already on the websites and in print, how to register, how to vote by different means, the clarity of the messaging. That, I'm afraid, is something that is subjective, and you would need feedback from members of the voting public as to how clear it is, because there can be confusion. And plug and play web pages. The idea would be that for any locality that doesn't have a website but does have internet access, that either a third party or the Department of Elections could prepare kind of a model, a web page that could be used and tailored to that locality. Standards or guidance as to what to include in material presented, that would be probably coming from the department. Or it could be, it wouldn't be in statute, I would hope. You can't get that level of detail into the code. And then response to disinformation and misinformation. This has become an increasingly significant issue, as we all know. And again, we look at the role of the department. Those of you who are on the front lines in the localities probably have to deal with this kind of thing, and there should be training in the best practices for responding. Then we get to ballot counting. Again, observation opportunities and availability. This has become an issue in past recent years. And then there are the questions of, can people observe pre-processing? Yes. Who's speaking? Someone?
Well, no one else said they were speaking. I'll go in and pitch in what I was thinking, and that is I would get rid of pre-processing as a separate thing. It only means something to us because it seems new, but it's no longer new. We process ballots, so whether it's processed on election day or before election day, it's just processing.
Very
so
good.
I would tidy that up. I mean, not that it's untidy. I just mean.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We'll strike that one. That's good. And then we have this, of course, the issue of the cap is another item that's actually before the General Assembly right now in terms of ballot tabulation. And then provisional ballot adjudication. Okay, then we move into results reporting. Again, we've already covered this ground in terms of timeliness and observation opportunity. I don't know if you observe that or if that's something that's simply.
Hey, Lisa.
Put out.
Sorry to interrupt. I would take out provisional ballot adjudication because the actual adjudication, the counting takes place in public, but the adjudication is forbidden from being public by federal and possibly state law. So when the board actually reviews them and determines issues or whatnot, that's a closed meeting, only open to certain observers.
Okay, we'll strike that. So what should it say? Provisional ballot counting? Because I believe the meeting is open up to a point, right?
Well, it's open really as far as, I mean, you can, the public, I'm not sure if it's open when this might be a Rachel question, like if Susie shows up to say, well, my provisional ballot should be counted, but it's not even supposed to be public what the reason for casting the ballot was. That's supposed to be something we redact, but it's a mixed bag because it is supposed to be open to certain observers. So it's not closed to everyone. It's open to certain representatives of candidates or parties.
Okay,
So,
all right. Kate, you're waving your hand.
Well, and it's probably different in every jurisdiction. Particularly with when people come to appeal their provisional ballot, that is a closed except for certain people. But when you actually adjudicate those, that's closed. But when you count them, that's open. So it's one of those things, as Walt says, that goes in and out. So I don't know that adjudication is the right word. There may be a better word for provisional ballot or something. I don't know what that is, but the whole process is not open.
Kate, it's under ballot counting, so maybe just
Provisional ballot counting. Yeah, go with
I
it.
mean, provisional ballots in the canvas or something like that, but yeah.
Okay. All right. Good, thank you. In results reporting, we mentioned timeliness, observation opportunity. I'm not sure whether that belongs there. And then explanation / demystification. This is something that is probably more for the department in terms of.
Barbara Tabb has her hand up.
I'm sorry, who does?
Yeah, I was just going back. I actually just went back to look at your provisionals. As far as being what is public and what isn't, when an electoral board makes a review of a provisional ballot, the electoral board, the person who is coming in to plead their case on that ballot, in addition to somebody from each political party or independent candidate, is allowed in that same room.
Yes.
So while it is quote unquote not allowed as a public event, there are still additional people beside the electoral board and the voter in the room if the parties or the candidate so desire. So it is a very carefully controlled, reviewed, especially in and I'll be quite honest, especially in this day where we have a method where folks can sign a document as to their identity and allowed to vote, and then potentially somebody comes in and says, I haven't voted, but yet I already have. We've had that here in the county where I live, and I think this is a very this is something we've got to be aware of, and I think this committee needs to be careful on how we put that in our report is all. Just be very, very aware.
Thank you. That's helpful. That's good to know. Okay, post-election auditing at the local and state levels. Those should be open to the public. And then, of course, certification has to be done by the electoral boards, and then at the state level by the state board. And then we have a question of timing and availability to the public of information regarding issues and incidents in localities and at the state level, and how those are resolved. And I believe there are issues regarding the measure of complaints, whether it's pure quantities or whether it is as a percentage of voters, just to show whether there are a lot of incidents relative to the size of that locality or not. And then I want to really take a moment on this question of security and the extent to which this kind of thing is susceptible to measurement in a public manner. I know that, Barry, I'm going to ask you, if you recall, you sent an email quite a few months ago, and I'm kind of throwing you a curveball here because I didn't discuss this with you before, suggesting certain security measures, and at an informal meeting, Allison expressed some objections to that, but I don't know if you recall that, Allison. I do think it's important that people know that there are security measures, but I also know that the electoral board is charged with coming up with the security measures for the locality, and that those are not available to the public. And I would welcome some discussion among the members about that. And I also would like Tram, if you could weigh in terms of what kinds of expectations you think are reasonable as a member of the public. Go ahead, Allison.
Lisa, if I could just start. I think I'm not sure that I had objections to the idea that that we wouldn't tell people that we have security. I think there was a lot of misunderstanding at that meeting about what we were talking about. I mean, we as a locality have processes that we have to go through, and then we do various things to certify to the Department of Elections our compliance with standards. And I mean, Jason's nodding his head. I think Barry, you're involved in some of that, or was involved in the work group that created some of these things. And so I'm not opposed to the idea that there is some public certification through the Department of Elections that all 133 localities are meeting our security standards. I think that's important. So I think this whole thing about security and a lot of these things you have on here where you break down these different sections of what's all essentially IT security falls into a category of the state should, that the locality certify to the state, and then the state is the one that would basically give the grade, give a scorecard. We're big in the world on scorecards, so Virginia would give our scorecard and it would show that we're all A+ times 1,000. Something is the dream and the hope. So just to be really clear, I mean, that is I think my position, and hopefully that was always my position, and maybe we were confused about what all we were talking about. And otherwise I would just, I don't know if Jason's got his hand up or, yeah. So Jason, if you'll help me explain this a little bit.
Yeah, so it's all tracked through the state, whether we're in compliance or not. The state has their requirements for compliance, and
Yes.
without getting too much into the weeds, because it is security and we can't have a level of that getting out into the public, like how we secure our machines. And I see that Rachel said that it's all available in the post-election report, but the citizens need to know that we are being secure and that we are taking certain steps, but it has to be released in a very sensitive way, because if we say, hey, look, we're doing X, Y, and Z to protect our voting machines, well, that just opens you up to say, oh, well, they're doing X, Y, and Z, here's how you get around it. So it's a fine line to walk there, is what I'm saying. So we might just lean to the election report. I see Barry's got his hand, so I'll pass the torch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jason's absolutely right. One of the hallmarks of security standards is you never tell people the details of how you assess to the security standard, because you're basically giving the hackers a cookbook for how to attack you, right? On the other hand, so that should that's not public information. It's exempt from FOIA, right? So because there are a number of FOIA exemptions for security information. On the other hand, what makes a well-run election, I believe, are the things that give the public confidence in the electoral process, right? There's a lot of FUD out there with regards to, Russians and Iranians putting false information out and so forth. So the public needs enough information to know that the elections are secure without knowing the details of, these three things at this locality really need to be worked on, right? Because we are all in different places with our information security. Jason's in a far different place than I am. I'm in a far different place than Arlington, and Arlington's in a far different place than Fredericksburg. So that's how you phrase that. And I don't know whether it's a scorecard. I'm not even sure Alec's going to want to do that, to say that, Jason's got a C+, and, I've got a C. Well, does that mean that the people in Mecklenburg should be more confident in their elections than people in Chesterfield? I don't know. The only thing I was raising, Lisa, was that we do know now empirically, locality by locality, what the risks are and how well they align to the security standards. That's all documented. It's in code. That it has to be reported. And we've developed in this other work group that Jason and I are on, how to look at that. So I don't know that I've got an answer, but I do think the security is important, but just not at a detailed level.
Can I make a suggestion that I think would save us a lot of time? And that is, we're not the security people. It's important for it to be covered. The state is already doing this. We just incorporate the security report by reference here and tell people go look at whatever else the state is doing. We don't need to duplicate it, have two work groups looking at security and spend our time on that. I mean, I don't see a lot of point for us spending all the time on that when it's already being done somewhere and vetted for what should be released, what can be released, what should not be released, and so on. I just think it's an enormous waste of resources.
Yep. This is Barbara. I agree with you 100%, Walt. I think we refer to that and then we move to our next topics that we need to worry about.
Okay. Trina, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm just going to chime in here because you name checked me as a public citizen member here. I agree with the previous speakers. I think our elections are safe and secure, and there are many protocols in place to ensure that. And I don't think we need to include it too specifically and get too detailed in this particular report, and that there are other reports that exist out there.
I agree also, and certainly Virginia has certification standards that exceed the federal standards, and we've got standards for electronic poll books that the federal government, the Elections Assistance Commission, doesn't even have. So, you know, as long as we're keeping an eye on that and it's reported generally, I think physical security is something that the public can understand. I think people are really impressed when they find out that, you know, the machines are locked up in cages, which are in a secure location, which is under video surveillance and has a padlock on the door and all of that kind of thing. That reassures people, as that, you know, somebody can't just walk in and start tampering with election equipment. And then you get, you know, people, there's questions about connectivity. People, you know, get very antsy about thinking that voting machines are connected to the internet. As long as that kind of information is out there, people can be satisfied with it.
Lisa?
Yes.
Yeah, Joanne
Yes,
Spradlin has had it up for a while.
Okay.
I'll wait until the end.
Okay, because I can't actually see everyone's hand, to be honest with you. Okay, Joanne, go ahead.
Oh.
I'm still concerned about, this actually goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, about, you know, what are we actually trying to get at here? And I think Allison and Walt and Barbara and Kate all made really good points about, we're basically saying, do we follow the code? But, you know, I kind of feel like that we're not completely looking at just that. There's also a lot of subjectivity going on, and I'm just concerned about that. So that's all I wanted to say.
Well, you know, for what it's worth, unfortunately or unfortunately, there is a question of public perception, and that is why we have citizen members on this work group. And I think you want to tamp down some of the subjectivity by having evidence that the code requirements are being followed. And to the potential extent that the code requirements are either inadequate or outmoded or overkill, you know, they could even be excessive, that we kind of, in collecting the information and measuring the election, we can illuminate some of these shortcomings and resolve them.
So you think we're working towards possible legislative changes?
That is not our role. Our role is to advise the State Board of Elections. So we're not advising a legislative body.
Lisa, Rachel's hand is up.
I see that. Rachel, go ahead.
Just a couple of points. I think the department generates a lot of data already, and a lot of the data, maybe not all of the data, that's outlined here it already exists. And so I think some of this is how do we package what we already create in a way that's digestible and accessible to people. So I think we should keep that in mind as we're going through that, particularly with items like the post-election report and some of the other things that are available already on the website. You know, we're already, you know, we've got all these measures. I think a lot of these measures are already being produced. So how can we, you know, make some of the things that we're already generating better is something that we should keep in mind, number one. And to the public perception issue, if we ignore public perception and we don't quantify it, somebody else is going to. And as we've seen in the elections community, people take that ball and they run it down the field, right? And so, you know, if we aren't there to sort of be a voice in that, somebody else is going to control that narrative. So I understand not wanting to be maybe judged on that issue, but I think it's out there and we can't ignore it. So that's just my 2 cents. Feel free to disagree with me.
Yeah, I think that's a very valuable set of observations here. Any other work group members wish to weigh in on this before we move forward? Okay. Take a look at the security section here, and we would welcome any suggestions for modifying these lists here. And I'd like to move on into accuracy. We're getting down to the end here, and then there are a few other items on the agenda, but we're moving well through here. With regard to accuracy, again, we have elect oversight and tracking of compliance. That is elect's job, is oversight, and we should be, you know, there should be a measure for that to make sure that they're doing their job on that. Then information on websites and printed material and forums, what Rachel was just saying about having data available and digestible. I would say that there are questions with regard to the Department of Elections website, and you know, we hope that when we get a new election management voter registration system in place in a couple of years, that they can completely overhaul the website. This is a personal opinion that I'm expressing here because I don't think it's the most user-friendly, and it's really important that the public be able to get information off the website. You have to be a little bit of a detective to find some things that are there, and get out your magnifying glass to find them. Then, of course, localities also need to have usable websites, and there could be perhaps recommendations for what should be included on their websites to make sure that it's all there. Then we get into the accuracy, of course, of the voter list management and maintenance. This is your jobs, you in the elections community. And then we need to know rates of success in LNA testing of the voting machines, including the ballot marking devices. I don't know, do you test the poll books as well?
Lisa, I'm not really sure what that means in this context, because they either work or they don't. And if they don't, for example, by not working, I mean like they're not counting votes as we anticipate, whatever scenario that would be, or the machine doesn't function correctly, like a screen doesn't come on or doesn't take a ballot. It's kind of a binary thing. It either works or it doesn't. And if it doesn't work, then we don't use it.
Okay.
So the success, I mean, I guess it's conceivable that someone is sending out machines that don't function, but I would think that that would be an exceptional circumstance. So I would think that the rate of success would be 100% every time. So it's basically almost like saying, did you send out machines that worked? And if someone said, well, no, I sent out machines that didn't work, I don't even know. I mean, I don't know what that's really getting at, or what it would be telling us, other than people don't know anything, which is a whole different measurement.
Well, should we strike this from the list? Would you
Yeah,
recommend that?
I would hope that we could strike the idea of the rate of success of LNA testing, because
Okay.
that implies that there's some percentage of failure. And like Walt said, that's simply just not possible. It's why LNA testing exists, to ensure that we have a piece of inoperable equipment.
Okay.
So
Maybe Lisa, and I don't know what others think, but maybe just LNA testing conducted. I mean, that it is logic and accuracy testing. So maybe it's not the success rate, but what was it conducted?
Yeah, I
Hey,
like, this is
Lisa.
Barbara again. I like
Yeah.
that better, because when an LNA testing is done, if it is not successful, a piece of equipment does not leave the testing facility until it's replaced or it's repaired by the vendor. There's no, like Allison and Walt said, there is no maybe here. It either works according to our test decks and gives us the correct results, or we replace it with a different piece of equipment or have it repaired.
Very good. Okay, Joanne, and then Rachel. Joanne, do you have your hand up?
No, I already spoke.
Oh, okay. Then if you could lower your hand. Thank you. And Rachel, did you have a comment here?
I think I'm guilty too. That was an old hand raise. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So I think, Lisa, I think the way this is written, it was meant to imply that there was value in seeing during the testing how many of the machines fail. Not that you would send failed machines into production, but is it a measure of a successful election to know that some percentage of the machines that you tested actually passed, like 99% passed the testing?
but you have to define that then, because
Right.
I've never
I know
had
that's, but I think that's what it's trying to say. It's trying to say what percentage passed testing, not what did you let failed machines into production.
well, okay, so let's just explain this for the people at home then, because I don't want people to be confused what we're talking about. The only thing I've ever seen in 16 years of LNA testing is that we find a piece of equipment that during LNA testing, we find a piece of equipment whose, like Walt said, screen doesn't want to come on. We have never had a piece of equipment that has actually failed the LNA test, which is the test to ensure that the results of the election are going to be accurate. So if we're going to put in the concept of the rate of success of LNA testing, we've got to clearly define that what we're saying is we don't care about the machine you found that was broken because the screen was busted, because a machine tech dropped the scanner. What we're talking about is we want the percentage of machines that when tested produced the accurate result. Because if you say, well, what's the rate of success of LNA testing, and you have people that want to include, machines that were broken or machines that had, we have locks and clips and places where seals and things can go. Though, sometimes there's a metal piece on a ballot bin that needs replaced. That machine did not fail LNA testing because it had a bent lock. So I think if what Barry's saying is you want to know what percentage of machines pass LNA testing, well, 100% of machines pass LNA testing. If they didn't pass LNA testing, there wouldn't be machines that were certified in the state for use. So let's be very clear, particularly for the people at home who aren't election administrators.
Okay, well, I'm not even sure that people need to know percentages of machines that fail LNA testing, as long as they know that any machine that is in use for voting has passed LNA testing. And Allison, you're adding that there's something in addition to LNA testing, which is that, that the seals are sealed and the screens are working and these other little things that have nothing to do with the innards
That's part of
the machine.
Well, no, but that's part of LNA testing. That's part of the checklist when we go through LNA testing.
But in other words,
Yeah, but this concept that would have failed LNA testing, well, in LNA testing, during the process of LNA testing, election administrators and machine custodians and vendors, we LNA test, which means that we run a test deck to ensure that the results are accurate and are going to produce accurate results on election day. We also check the functionality of, ballot bins. Do the locks work? Do all the buttons work? Does the screen come on? Will it charge? Do we have a power cord that that will accept charge and that functions? That is not part of LNA testing as defined in the code, but it's part of the process that goes into the entire testing procedure, or the entire day worth of checklists and things we do to make sure that the machine functions. So I guess that's what I was explaining, was that during the LNA testing event, these are also all of the things that are checked and are part of the process. Some people may think that's part of LNA testing, but technically that's just part of, your good procedure that you're doing to make sure that the election runs okay.
Well, I think that that's important for the public to know that that kind of thing is included, so that people can be comfortable that the machines that they were using to cast their ballots all function properly and have been checked for all of those reasons. Now, Rachel, you did have your hand up, and I didn't know if you pulled it back down.
Oh, I was just gonna echo what Allison was saying, that, all of this is sort of tracked right now in the post-election report, maybe not on that granular of a level about what happens in LNA testing. And we do track as the department, like a machine that does not pass LNA testing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is not going to be used on election day. You're going to call reps in to fix it, or you're not going to use that machine, right? So it's not a matter of what fails and what doesn't, because if it fails, it's not being used in the election. But we do track as in a department, compliance with LNA testing, and that is tracked in our program Integra. And that information is available in the post-election report as well. So we are tracking it already. So,
Lisa,
just for
I would suggest just changing it to be like the main heading is testing of voting, pre-election testing of voting machines. And under that, I would have sub-bullet points of logic. And I would use logic and accuracy testing, because no one else outside of, LNA is like a colloquial term.
Well, this is an internal document, frankly. It's not a final thing. So,
okay.
Yes.
So I would, okay, so LNA testing, and then I would have a line or bullet for fit for purpose. Are the machines fit for use? And because that's also what goes on. Is the machine functioning like it needs to be? It's kind of a sub thing under LNA testing, because if it doesn't turn on, then it is not reading. It's not counting the ballots if it doesn't turn on. So if we want to have that clear, you could, but I guess you could break it out that way. But I would go with, are they tested or not? Because that's really what we're trying to do. I think that would go to the accuracy of it. That's what the point of it is the machine accurate?
Well, we're talking about accuracy here, and I wondered I would like it if you could suggest some language, if you could email us all, and we can fine tune this. And then, then there was a question of disposition of machines failing tests. This could be an obvious thing where you call the technician in from the vendor and get it repaired, or you don't throw it away, I don't think. And then we're looking at the accuracy of the ballots, and I know that there's ballot proofing that has to go on where the ballots are submitted to the department for checking. And then, of course, there's the question of the mailings, and then the ballot tracking and ballot curing. Incidents of incorrect ballots given or mailed to voters.
What can I ask? What does the ballot? How do you envision ballot curing fitting under accuracy? Because that's where the voter didn't do something right.
That's whether if the voter does something wrong, and the voter has an opportunity to correct it, is the voter contacted? I mean, there have been some issues of making sure that voters are in fact contacted, as long as the ballot is received in a timely enough fashion that the elections officials can get back to that person and see about fixing things.
I'm not sure that that's accuracy. I think that I'm not sure that that really falls under accuracy. That's
Okay.
probably under accessibility, and we may have it under accessibility somewhere.
Yeah, that
I'm
would.
just gonna
Yeah, that
make
would be. Yeah, I think. Did you get a note on the other one, Allison? The one I just said about LNA testing, or that we were all talking about, like the 2 bullet points for LNA and fitness for purpose.
I got a big circle around it with a note that says Walt to help me remember.
Okay. Okay, so we will move the ballot curing to accessibility.
Lisa?
I mean, maybe it goes, I feel like it goes somewhere else.
Okay, well, we'll look at that. Yes, Barry?
Jane Newell had a note in the chat. Mention of post-election reports has been made. However, not all localities produce a post-election report. That seemed germane. I just wanted to mention it. You may not have seen it in the chat.
This is Rachel.
Yeah, Rachel was fine.
An elect document that elect produces to be transparent about all the things that take place during the election, and it gives a big picture overview. It does break things down, however. Certain localities are mentioned by name in the report if there were issues or irregularities, but it's solely an elect document. Now, whether or not a local electoral board or registrar decides to produce their own, we don't require that, but we do produce a report that goes over the election, and it's 60 pages this year, but it's really great place to start and read over to kind of get a big picture view of what happened and what we track every election cycle.
Is that on the Department of Elections website?
It is, yeah. I actually put a link, and I can re-put that link in. And if you go to the department's website, you can actually read the last 3 years, I think, are up on there. And I know our website isn't exactly user-friendly, so I'll be sure to drop a link there. I know we're working to improve that, but so you all can review that and kind of get a sense of what we're already tracking.
Lisa, farther up in the document where you talk about making things accessible on the website, you may want to mention this by name. You may want to mention this document by name if it's got such great information. It's my only thought.
I have a copy of it here. I certainly can't screen share this thing. As Rachel says, it's over 60 pages long. And the way to find it is when you go on the website, up at the top, it'll say results/reports, and you click on that and it takes you to a page where on the far left side, it does say post-election reporting, and you can click on that and it'll give you the last few years. So, and it's not required that elect do this. This was something that the department chose to do of its own volition. And with regard to, then there's the question of poll worker error check-in. I think if there's going to be sorting at the precinct level, the ballots that are sent by mail or that are voted early in person in a satellite vote center, that could be quite an issue. And I know that I, as a poll worker myself, once was at an election where the ballots were sticking together when we took them out of their packages, And we were trying to make sure that we sorted them properly so that we wouldn't be giving any voter two ballots. But it appears that in one instance, the two ballots were stuck together. It didn't really make any problem in terms of the actual results because it was a one-sided ballot. But it did make the count off by one in terms of people who had checked in and the number of ballots cast. So that was a concern, and you know, unless you had a recount or something which was certainly not needed in that election, those ballots are all packaged up and stored with the county clerk, and they're not, you can't just go back through and see which ones were stuck together. So these are the kinds of things that you want to just kind of keep in mind as you're going through. And then I've noticed that that other states have had evaluations where they were looking at overcounts and undercounts. And it's not clear to me why that is a significant question. I don't know what that indicates or demonstrates. And I don't know if anyone on the work group would like to say whether or not that should be included and what the value of that might be.
So, I mean, there's a couple of different definitions out in the world talking about what an overvote is, and the easiest way to explain an overvote is when you have more people who vote on your machine than got checked into your poll book in a precinct. I mean, you scale that up to a larger scale, and then, you know, maybe it's during early voting. I mean, because we track our turnout daily for early voting and our participation daily for early voting. So it would be when an overvote would be when more people voted than got checked in on your poll book. I mean, that's the simplest way to look at what that is. And as far as undervotes are concerned, an undervote is when there are more people who turned out to vote than voted in a particular race. So in years like, for instance, that we have a presidential election. It's one of the easiest ones to understand because most people who come out and vote on election day during a presidential election are showing up to vote for president, but also on their ballot, on the regular schedule, they will have the federal Senate seat in 2 out of 3 years. They'll have the Senate. They'll have a congressman on there. If there are constitutional amendments for the state or there are special elections in their locality, those will appear on the November ballot. So most people are showing up to vote for president. A lot of people also vote for Senate. A few less people will vote for Congress. And then by the time you get to the constitutional amendments, there's a lot of people who voted for president who didn't vote for the constitutional amendments. You don't necessarily know who those people were, but the numbers tell you that as you move down the ballot on the races, you have drop off. And that's what an undervote is. It can also be described as the drop off of the voters because they don't vote for the down ballot races. That's the easiest way to understand an undervote when you're looking at turnout versus actual vote cast.
Could you repeat what you said for the overvote? Because my impression was that an overvote might be if somebody filled in the ovals completely for two candidates when it was a primary choice.
Like I said, this term defines multiple things. An overvote can be when more people vote on the machine than got checked into the poll book. And I've got that because somebody's making a whole lot of
It's Walt. I'm going to mute him.
Okay.
Sorry, Walt.
Sorry, Walt. But okay, so an overvote can be when there are more votes on your machine than got checked into your poll book. So Lisa, in your example that you explained where you give somebody two ballots and your numbers were off, if they had run both of those ballots through the machine, one voted, one blank, presumably that they just ran a blank ballot, and didn't actually vote twice. That person did not get checked into your poll book twice. So you would have been off. There was one more vote on your machine than there was on your poll book. That can be an overvote. An overvote is also when there are two candidates on the ballot, it's a vote for one, and the person who fills out their ballot marks the oval next to both people. That's also called an overvote. So it depends on what you're talking about and where you're looking to capture this information, which definition of an overvote applies.
Lisa, these terms are defined in 802.2, overvote and undervote.
Okay.
I don't know really if you mean something different by overcount or undercount. I think somewhere in the code we're required to report overvotes in the sense that someone has basically rendered their ballot uncountable by not making clear who they were voting for when they could only vote for one. And then with undervotes, the problem that we have with the undervote situation is in a lot of races, you can only have one undervote or it would be blank. But if you have an election for multiple seats in one office, like a membership on city council at large, you could have, someone votes for 3 out of 3. They have 0 undervotes, or they have 3 undervotes. Maybe they just don't like anyone. So all of these numbers are reported. The overvotes are supposed to be reported into Verus. The undervotes are able to be determined based on all the other information that's provided. So I think the overvotes are just something requested in Verus. So if it's not reported, I don't know if the state is getting in touch with people or not. If they're not reporting it, again, they either are or they aren't.
Well, you can't identify who cast that ballot. And I'm not sure. I guess my question is, in measuring a well-run election, is this information useful?
Yes.
No. No.
I think it is, because it's required to be reported, and the overvote is required. And if you report the votes cast for a candidate, your turnout, and your overvotes, then you know what your undervotes are, and then that can be relevant if you're doing a recount. People will know how many possible blank ballots or undervoted ballots there are.
Yeah,
But
this is Barbara. Let me chime in a minute, Walt. We just did a sheriff's race that we had to do a recount. And because it was the sheriff's race, we had less than 50% of our voters voted for the sheriff's race as opposed to who voted for the governor's race. When we had to do that recount, it was a major issue with some of the folks here in the county who didn't understand undervotes and the fact that, yes, you can walk in and vote for one person and nobody else on the ballot. So I agree. This is an important thing, Walt, to have us track and to know what undervotes are by race.
I will just say that.
I'm sorry.
This gets into an argument that me and Walt have had for a decade now. So I will spare this committee our personal spat over the concept of overvotes and undervotes, because once upon a time in Verus, there was guidance that said you only reported overvotes if the overvote was actually when you had more people voting on your machine than turned out in your precinct. So the concept of what undervotes and overvotes are, and when they're relevant, when they're not relevant, what usefulness is there. I agree that when you see on your tapes that there was a significant number of people who spoiled their ballot but ran it anyway by overvoting the office, that can be useful in knowing that you have voters who don't understand how to properly mark their ballot. That's useful from my perception that my officers need to do a better job of illustrating to them the multiple places they can look within a precinct to know how they're supposed to mark their ballot. However, it's only useful from that viewpoint. And so if we look at a broader, holistic, why is this important? I'm not sure that it is something that needs to be measurable on a statewide scale, other than just from an internal registrar electoral board viewpoint that says, we've got voters who continue to mess up their ballots. So that's my take on it, because there are multiple definitions in the world of elections as a whole for what these terms apply to. So they apply to both concepts, and it can be confusing without the proper explanation.
Okay. To me, I will get to you in a moment, Barry, but
Okay.
To me, this is very useful as a voter education tool to teach people how to complete their ballot. Most people only vote they vote infrequently. Not everyone shows up for every single election, and they're just not habituated to doing something like completing a ballot. So education is necessary. And I would like to call attention in the chat for everyone that Rachel Lawless put in the link to the post-election report, and also put in a code section on ballot scanner machines, the number of ballots on which a voter undervoted or overvoted. And so you can find that there. And I see, Barry, did you have something first? And then I'll get to Rachel.
I was going to mention voter education and whether overvotes were an indication of a well-run election, because voter education efforts had taken place. You have fewer overvotes when you do more voter education. So is it an indicator of voter education is the question. That's the only thing I need. That's basically what you said, Lisa. So that's all I was going to mention.
Okay, Rachel?
Just a note, sorry, I was having a snack. Just a note on the post-election report. This year, anyway, I was responsible for collecting all that data and putting it together. And so if you're reading it and you're on this group and you have suggestions on how to make it better or more accessible, I am open to that and making that a better, more functional document. So I know it's not the mandate of this group, but I would appreciate the feedback in making that better as you think about measures and measuring elections. So I'm just going to put that plug in there as you guys are reviewing that.
Okay, very good. Joanne, did you have something?
Yes, excuse me. I just wanted to mention, sometimes people overvote and undervote intentionally. I mean, I know in our locality, if there's an overvote, the ballot gets spit out and the person has the opportunity to redo the ballot, and they say, no, I want to do that. So just that's something, that, and it's not a matter of education, although I do think voter education is a very important thing. But like I said, sometimes people, just like people vote for Mickey Mouse, so they do it intentionally.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm glad we had this discussion. It's been illuminating. And then we have, again, the accuracy of the count and the reporting and the uploading of data into the election management system. And finally, the accuracy of recounts and audits. And these are things that we would hope we could measure. And of course, they would contribute substantially to whether or not the election was well run. If the counts aren't right, then you've got a problem. But I think that this is wrapping up. This portion of our work has been really vital, and we'll next time we can look at maybe some of the ways we measure this stuff and make sure that we've got the material available to us, that the data is there, and that it's collected, and how best to present it. and then we can complete our work after that. And we should
Hey,
be
Lisa.
talking a little bit about future assignments. The chairman, Bob Brink, asked me specifically to go to the State Board of Elections members and inquire of them what they would like to see as our next project. It did seem to me that it would be best to present them with a potential slate, not that they would have to pick one of them, but at least it would be food for thought, so that when I say, give us a project, they aren't just saying, where do I begin, but they can at least look at something. And some of the ones that we've talked about are, I can list 4 of them, and I've invited all the work group members to contribute ideas, and I did go a little bit outside this group to get some thoughts. But one is simply to go into phase 2 of this project. Once we've got the measures set in place, how are we going to implement it? And I would like to call your attention to a document that, there are a couple of documents that were attached to the agenda for the work group members. These are not for the public, but the University of Virginia Political Science Department did a couple of surveys, and some of the things that we have on our list of measures are things where we would need input from voters. And while I would not say that these surveys, one was done before the election and one was done after the election in 2021 in November, I would not say that we would use these questions. You know, there are questions in there about who did you vote for in the post-election survey. We would never ask something like that. But at least you can see the kinds of questions that professionals in this field use. And when we come back next time, we can consider whether that would be something suitable. Jason, you have a question?
Just a quick statement. I read the surveys and every question on there, and some of the questions were good. Most of them were very subjective and had no middle ground. It was either it's good or it's bad. It was no, well, this went kind of well, but it was very subjective. And I would caution everybody before we use these to read them very closely, because this is asking a set of questions to get a certain result.
Okay,
Lisa.
well, yes.
Lisa, hey, Allison, I've got 2 things. I would ask that we go to a 10 or 15-minute break. We have sit here now since, some of us since before 10 o'clock, and it's almost noon. I think some of us could appreciate a few minute break before we come back and tackle the rest of the agenda regarding future assignments and public comment, because I think we've probably still got quite a bit of a meeting left.
Well, Allison, I would say yes, except for 2 things. One is, this is a list of possible questions. We're not going to go to the state board until March, and I'm simply laying them out there, and then I'm not asking for anyone to make decisions.
No, that is fine. I'm just saying there's quite a bit of an agenda left, and Barry could very easily put us all on mute, and we could have a 10 or 15 minutes before we tackle the rest of the agenda.
There's 2 things left in the agenda after this. There's the public comment and the adjournment, right? Lisa, is that correct?
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
So are we not discussing future assignments?
That's what we're doing right now.
Well, we can discuss these. I had simply intended to put out a list, and then we could actually finalize that list at our March meeting. This was just an initial description of a few things, and we can add to this list too.
I would like to add too. I don't know how much time I can stay. I mean, I think we need to look at some kind of termination of this meeting too, because I don't really want to spend or cannot spend the rest of the day on the meeting.
Well, I was hoping that we would wrap up by noon, which was the announced time period. You know, it's 10 more minutes or 8 more minutes now.
Yeah, we have 8 minutes. I would say that my suggestion is we move to public comment then. We can discuss future assignments when we actually have something to discuss.
Okay, well, I would ask you all to contemplate future assignments. You know, just very briefly, just to tell you what some of these things are. There are only a couple more. One would be the contents of a voter education campaign and how to execute it. One would be to examine what the board is in fact responsible for. And there's that dry chart of the delegation of responsibilities between the department and the state board, what the state board can't delegate to the department, and we can look at that and evaluate it. And then depending on the timing, possibly assisting, making recommendations on implementing same-day voter registration. So those were the things. And now I'm happy to open it to see whether there are any members of the public who would like to speak. I notice, Rachel, you have your hand up?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to have my hand up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see is it Patricia Rendell?
Yes, that's me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have a really basic question. This is my first time attending this, so I just want to understand, is this going to be turned into a checklist that my board is responsible for completing? I am responsible for completing. We have a lot of observers, and I'm very concerned with the fact that they can use this document against the registrars who have maybe, you know, a lower grade, or they can nitpick in between. So what is the whole purpose of this program? And we required to participate?
It's a very good question. This would not be something that the public would receive in order to give a grade. This would be where the Department of Elections probably, I mean, it would be really for the state board. And the state board wants to know how to evaluate elections. And to the extent that there would be an actual evaluation, it would be internal to the Board of Elections. And to the extent that we might need professional assistance, we would work that out separately, but it would not be something where the public might be surveyed, which is why I mentioned the surveys, but it would not be where the public would generally comment. I mean, you can always complain if there's an issue, right, and you could always comment, but it's not that we would be disseminating a checklist to the public.
So it's exempt from FOIA?
It would be open to FOIA.
So they could get a list of everything that goes on, positive, negative. Again, it's subjective. Who's completing this document? Because it's rather extensive.
Yes, and the purpose would be to have supporting data to indicate whether or not the election was successful. It would be background and support to validate the conclusion. You know, when the Commissioner of Elections announces that this was a successful election, he or she would have this type of report, you know, internal report that could be used to support all of that.
Okay,
and that's a very good question. Thank you.
One last question. We are now required to provide everything in Spanish, so we're bilingual. For the survey that we would give out to our voters, I would have to provide that. So if you were going to provide it, please translate it for us. But then how do we translate it back?
I don't know the answer to that. Anybody? I mean, you know, if it's a code requirement, then you do that, or it's in the manual.
You don't want to use Google.
No.
Is Patricia Brendel a registrar?
Yes,
You-
yes, I am. Yes.
Yeah, okay, well, you know, you would want to resolve that with your peers
Yeah.
Yeah.
and get guidance perhaps from the department.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Do we have other comments or questions?
Frank has had her hand up.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, Frank Pointer, I'm chairman of the Mountains County Electoral Board. And to this topic of evaluating the election, our Board of Supervisors seems they have a specific role in evaluating this, and they've taken up personal agenda, taken on our general registrar as all the things she's doing wrong, and they seem to think they have the power. Although over the years I've done my best to educate them what their role is and what ours are, they still seem to think they are the supervisors of her as a county employee, and it's continuing to be a problem. So I'm just reluctant to open the evaluations of everybody up to how well an election does, because as was pointed out earlier, they do not understand, even though we let them we're very transparent about what goes on. There's so much nuances that go into an election that it's impossible for it, unless you're involved in it, to even understand what's going on. Yet we continue to get criticism in ways where we should do better, like have less officers of election, or who should move our equipment. And so, and they've used that as a tool to measure how well we are not doing. And I want to appreciate this work group for all the work you're doing. You've taken on a monumental task, and I agree with everything that's been said pretty much. It's a moving target. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I see Damian Lundquist. Does someone have a hand up?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I guess two things. For LNA testing, I did put a note, if you copy the chat or not, but 633 allows the parties to have a representative whenever LNA testing is done. And then I guess maybe a way to clarify overvoting either might be to call mismatch, which would then mean a mismatch between the poll book and the OVO count. And that would show the overvote, or if you just want to call it overvote machine versus overvote on ballots. But the overvote on ballots is going to show up on the certificate at the end of the night anyhow, because it's going to say how many overvotes and how many undervotes were on the ticket. So I don't know if you want to change that term for mismatch to make it clear that it's between the poll book and the OVO versus the ballots.
That's an interesting suggestion. I would say that this would be something where I would like the members of the work group to comment in writing, and we can take it up again at the next meeting when we're finalizing the document. And also, I would like to ask, Tammy Beard, did you have a comment on any of this as a work group member?
Not at this time, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any other, are there any other hands up? All right.
Rachel has her hand up still.
Oh, Rachel. Yes.
I'm sorry. It's not me. I'm sorry. I don't have my hand up. I don't know why it keeps doing that. I didn't.
It's
Anyway,
down now.
I'm sorry to hold you up.
That's fine.
I have lots of opinions apparently today.
So there is a person I'm trying to unmute that is 504. Everybody that's on the phone is unmuted except for 1-540-422-8000. I muted them and I can't seem to unmute them. I can't seem to turn them back on. They would have to do that through their phone. So everybody else, should be able to raise a hand or pipe up. So I don't see anybody else, Lisa.
Diana, is that you? In the middle, it looks, since we have a picture of you, I assume you're on your laptop. If you hover over the screen, there is a little microphone that allows you to select or deselect your level of muteness.
Well, I don't think she has a microphone on her computer. That's
Well, I just heard you.
You're on.
Yeah,
she's on the
like-
phone.
I just unmuted
fine.
through the phone. That's how I had to do it. And
Oh,
Very
okay.
good.
fine. Yeah. I would have spoken up if I needed to.
Okay.
Good.
It's like you were waving at us, Diana.
Hi, Diana. Okay. All right. Well, it looks as though we've completed the work for today. And I thank you all for your time and your patience and look forward to the next meeting. The location is to be determined. It is March 1st in the morning before the State Board of Elections meeting, which is at 1 p.m. that day. But as we all know, the General Assembly is still in session and space is at a premium in Richmond, and so is parking for that matter. But we will try to find a location that is suitable for all of us and for those who wish to attend the State Board meeting, not too inconvenient. So thank you all for your time, and I urge the work group members to please submit comments on the outline. And then next time we will take a look at this pretty extensive couple of documents that our consultant Jackie Anderson prepared on how to actually measure. And we'll take a look at what we've got in terms of what we can measure. So
Lisa,
yes, Allison.
you said March 1st. I know you've sent that out. Are we committed to meeting in the Richmond area, in the greater Richmond area? Means we're doing this on the same day as the State Board meeting.
Yes. That's the
Okay.
that's the point.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And are we at 10 a.m. or
We're at 10 a.m.
We're
We're at 10 a.m. They're at 1 p.m.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So without further ado, thank you all, and the meeting is adjourned.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Y'all be good.